I'll never forget the smirk on my sister's face when she spotted me. It was 3 a.m., and the fluorescent lights of the logistics hub hummed, casting long shadows. My uniform was smudged with grease, and my eyes, accustomed to the dim glow of computer, screens and warehouse aisles, probably looked as tired as I felt. "Leo," she said, her voice laced with a mixture of disbelief and amusement, echoing through the cavernous space. "What in the world are you doing here?" Little did she know, this sprawling operation, this very company she was interning for, was mine. The same sister who had danced through her days while I toiled through countless nights, believing my sacrifices were for naught. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Santiago name had always been associated with comfort and leisure in our vibrant, sun-drenched city. My father, Ricardo Santiago, was a charming but somewhat aimless man who had inherited a small, respectable art gallery. He ran it more as a hobby than a business, ensuring we had enough to live comfortably, but never pushing for growth or expansion. By the time I, Leo Santiago, arrived in 1990, the gallery was a pleasant, if unremarkable, fixture in the local art scene. My earliest memories are steeped in the scent of oil paints and freshly ground coffee from the cafe next door. While other kids' fathers regaled them with stories of adventure, mine would talk about the subtle brushstrokes of a forgotten landscape or the intricate symbolism of a contemporary sculpture. My mother, Maria, a former concert pianist who gave up her career when I was born, was the creative soul of our home, filling our lives with melodies and philosophical discussions. "Life isn't about chasing the grandest stage, Leo," she would often say, her fingers dancing over the piano keys. "It's about finding harmony in the everyday." My sister Chloe arrived 3 years after me, a burst of sunshine and unbridled energy. From the moment she could walk, she was a whirlwind of social engagements, ballet classes, and impromptu dance parties in the living room. Where I was content to lose myself in books or tinker with old electronics, Chloe thrived on interaction, effortlessly charming everyone she met. When she announced at 16 that her dream was to become a social media influencer and travel the world, our parents, ever the free spirits, simply nodded with gentle encouragement. There were no expectations for her to join the family business, no pressure to conform to a predetermined path. She was free, and I, in my own quiet way, envied that freedom. I, on the other hand, gravitated towards structure and numbers. I excelled in math and logistics in high school, drawn to the tangible results of efficient systems. While Chloe spent her summers interning at trendy boutiques and networking with emerging artists, I took odd jobs at local warehouses, fascinated by the movement of goods, the intricate dance of supply chains. I interned at a small regional logistics company, learning the operations from receiving to dispatch. My father, bless his artistic soul, never quite understood my fascination with boxes and trucks, as he called it. He'd occasionally make a bemused comment about my unusual hobbies, but there was never any direct criticism, just a gentle bewilderment. By my senior year of college, where I pursued a degree in supply chain management, I had developed a clear vision for the future. The art gallery, while charming, was stagnant. Its online presence was non-existent, its inventory management archaic, and its reach limited. It was a beautiful relic, but in a rapidly changing world, it was becoming obsolete. The gallery was perhaps worth a comfortable few million on paper, but its potential was being squandered by a lack of business acumen. When I tried to discuss modernization with my father during holiday breaks, he would smile patiently and wave a dismissive hand. "Real art happens in the soul, Leo, not on a spreadsheet," he'd say, returning to his latest acquisition. "When you've lived as many years as I have, then you'll understand true value." What my father failed to realize was that the business world had evolved dramatically since he first opened his gallery. Global commerce, Digital distribution and sophisticated logistics had transformed every industry. His gallery, a beautiful, comfortable dinosaur, was ill-equipped for a changing environment. I graduated with honors and a comprehensive business plan for a new kind of company, a nighttime logistics and fulfillment operation hidden deep within my laptop. My parents hadn't asked to see it, and I hadn't offered. But as I prepared to launch my own venture, I knew that this plan would either build my own legacy or completely separate me from the comfortable, artistic world of the Santiago family. Possibly both. When I landed my first small contract, a local e-commerce store needing late-night package sorting and dispatch, it wasn't Maxwell Harrison, the son of the founder, proving himself. It was just Leo, the new college graduate with everything to prove, operating out of a rented garage and fueled by caffeine and an unshakable belief in the power of the nocturnal economy. And prove it I would, though not in the way anyone, least of all my sister Chloe, expected. My first night working set the tone for the next several years. The hours were grueling, the work often physically demanding, but I absorbed everything, identifying inefficiencies and outdated processes in the established daytime logistics models. It was during these lonely hours, surrounded by the quiet hum of machinery and the rhythm of my own breath, that I truly began to understand the potential of a dedicated nighttime operation. I wasn't just sorting packages. I was learning the unseen arteries of commerce, the pulse of the global economy after the world went to sleep. Meanwhile, Chloe was living a different kind of life. Her social media ventures took off, not in a way that garnered massive global fame, but enough to support her travel habit and her passion for documenting vibrant cultures and beautiful places. She posted idyllic photos from Bali, shared stories from artisan markets in Morocco, and filmed playful dance routines on sun-drenched beaches. Our parents, ever so proud, would share her latest posts at family dinners, beaming as they talked about her adventures. When asked about my work, I'd offer vague answers about logistics consulting or freelance project management, a subtle misdirection that kept my true, gritty reality hidden. I'd listen to Chloe's stories, a strange mix of pride for her, joy, and a quiet ache of disconnect, knowing that my world of sweat and deadlines was light years away from her carefree existence. She genuinely seemed happy, and that was enough for me. It was during my early days of trying to build this company, Nocturne Logistics, that I met Elena Rodriguez, a brilliant night shift supervisor at a regional courier service who had been with the industry for 20 years. Unlike most people who found my nocturnal ambitions quirky or unsustainable, Elena spoke frankly. "The world sleeps, but commerce doesn't, Leo," she told me over coffee one early morning as the sun began to peek over the horizon. "There's a whole untapped market after dark, but it takes grit and a different kind of thinking to serve it. Most people just don't have the stomach for it." I finished her sentence. Or the vision. Elena became my first ally, providing insights into the nuances of nighttime operations that weren't in any textbook. She introduced me to other night shift professionals who recognized the untapped potential, but lacked the entrepreneurial drive to act on it. My small garage-based operation quickly grew, moving into a small warehouse, then a larger one, fueled by an insatiable demand for rapid, off-hours fulfillment. I found a niche serving burgeoning e-commerce businesses that needed their products, moving while their competitors' warehouses were shut down for the night. Our slogan became, "When the city sleeps, we deliver." I also maintained a close, though carefully curated relationship with Sophia Chen, a brilliant software engineer I'd met during a late-night hackathon in college. While not directly involved in logistics, her outside perspective on automation and data analytics proved invaluable. Many nights, she would listen patiently as I outlined my vision for Nocturne Logistics, offering encouragement when the sheer exhaustion or the skepticism of others had left me questioning my capabilities. "You're building a foundation, Leo," Sophia said one evening as we coded late into the night. "They might not see it now, but you're creating something essential, something that fills a gap no one else dares to touch. 6 months into my entrepreneurial journey, I saw a significant opportunity. A major online retailer was struggling with next-day delivery promises for customers placing orders late in the evening. Their current logistics partners were purely daytime operations, leading to bottlenecks and delayed shipments. I prepared a detailed proposal for a dedicated nighttime fulfillment and sorting service, complete with cost analyses, efficiency projections, and a phased implementation timeline that promised to shave hours off their delivery window. The head of their logistics department, a gruff man named Mr. Henderson, barely glanced at it during our initial meeting. "Son, we've been doing deliveries the same way for 30 years, he declared. "If it's not broken, don't fix it." I should have stayed quiet. Instead, I replied, "It is broken, Mr. Henderson. That's why your customers are complaining about delayed shipments." The room fell silent. Henderson's face reddened. But before he could respond, Ms. Davies, a senior operations manager who rarely spoke during introductory meetings, cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should consider Leo's proposal, Mr. Henderson," she suggested mildly. "The numbers look solid. The customer reviews about late deliveries are growing." To everyone's surprise, Henderson agreed to let me lead a small pilot program to demonstrate my proposed solution, though his parting words made his expectations clear. "When this fails, we'll go back to doing things our way, son." It didn't fail. The client not only saw a dramatic improvement in their late-night delivery metrics, but increased their order volume significantly. It was a small victory, but it earned me a modicum of respect among the industry and provided the crucial initial capital and credibility Nocturne Logistics needed to truly take flight. I secured a significant contract, expanding my team and moving into a much larger, dedicated facility. Over the next year, I gradually implemented changes within my operation, careful to scale strategically. Productivity improved, costs decreased, and employee satisfaction rose as we cultivated a unique, close-knit night shift culture. Other smaller e-commerce businesses began consulting me privately, implementing similar nighttime strategies in their own supply chains. My family, particularly my sister Chloe, continued to have no idea about the scale of what I was building. They just saw me as the quiet one who worked odd hours, still occasionally asking if I would ever consider joining the gallery. My parents watched with a growing, though still bewildered, pride as my logistics consulting seemed to become increasingly successful. During a particularly rare family dinner where I was present, my father even mused, "Leo, your odd hours certainly seem to be paying off. Your mother and I are thinking of expanding the gallery to a second location. Perhaps you could offer some logistical advice?" The request wasn't entirely unexpected, but the timing, given my own accelerating growth, was. "I'm trying to expand Nocturne Logistics," I said, avoiding direct eye contact. "By distracting yourself with a gallery expansion," he countered. "This gallery has survived for 50 years without your grand schemes. Remember that." The conversation made one thing clear. Incremental understanding wouldn't be enough. If Nocturne Logistics was going to truly transform the industry, I needed more resources and a strategic advantage that even my family couldn't ignore. That's when I began developing my comprehensive expansion plan and investigating the intricacies of the National Fulfillment Network. What I discovered about a struggling regional carrier, Midnight Express, would change everything, though neither my family nor I could have predicted how completely. The opportunity I'd been waiting for came, unexpectedly. Nocturne Logistics had been successfully managing late-night last-mile delivery for small to medium-sized e-commerce businesses, but a new wave of demand for ultra-fast, coast-to-coast shipping was disrupting the market. Larger, established carriers, primarily daytime operations, were struggling to adapt their vast networks to the demands of 24/7 fulfillment. I spent weeks researching the fragmented national logistics market analyzing gaps in service, and developing a strategy that would not just respond to the threat, but position Nocturne Logistics at the forefront of the burgeoning nocturnal shipping industry. The plan required significant investment and a complete overhaul of our regional infrastructure into a national hub-and-spoke model. But the potential return was enormous. When I presented my findings to Elena and Sophia privately, their response was cautiously optimistic. "It's ambitious, Leo," Elena declared, tracing a finger over my detailed flowcharts. "But the demand is there. No one else has the guts to go all in on the night shift." Sophia, ever the pragmatist, focused on the data. "The projections are aggressive, but achievable if we optimize our tech stack." The argument escalated during subsequent internal meetings until I slammed my fist on the table. "Enough! We're not just a nighttime courier service anymore. We're building the backbone of future commerce." Rather than continuing a losing battle, with cautious internal voices, I requested time to present my proposal to potential investors. My network, built painstakingly over years of working the forgotten hours, responded with surprising enthusiasm. The night before the final presentation to a group of angel investors, I received a call from Elena. "There's a lot of buzz, Leo," she warned me, "but also a lot of skepticism. Many of these investors have been burned by disruptive logistics ideas before. Make sure you highlight the unique advantages of our nocturnal model." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I've watched you work for the past 3 years, Leo," Elena replied. "You care about this company's future more than anyone else realizes. Don't let their doubts sabotage you tomorrow." The investor meeting was tense. The leading investor, a stern-faced woman named Ms. Albright, introduced my presentation with thinly veiled skepticism, emphasizing the untested nature of an entirely nocturnal national logistics network. When I stood to speak, I felt every eye in the room evaluating not just my ideas, but my worthiness as a young entrepreneur daring to challenge established giants. For 90 minutes, I outlined the market shift, presented competitive analyses, and detailed my strategy for pivoting Nocturne Logistics toward the emerging ultra-fast shipping demand. I addressed potential risks and implementation challenges, concluding with a phased approach that would minimize disruption while maximizing opportunities. The questions were pointed, sometimes hostile, but I was prepared. By the meeting's end, even Ms. Albright seemed intrigued by the potential. When the vote came, my proposal for significant seed funding passed with a slim majority. My expression was unreadable as I left the meeting, my mind already racing with the monumental task ahead. I didn't speak to anyone for days afterward, just poured myself into the work. Implementing the strategy proved even more challenging than winning approval. Long-standing operational habits had to be broken. I worked 16-hour days troubleshooting problems and rallying the team despite the immense pressure. It was during this period that I discovered something crucial about the national logistics landscape. Many regional carriers, unable to compete with the sheer scale of the industry giants, were struggling. One in particular, Midnight Express, a once proud courier service specializing in intercity overnight freight, was on the brink of collapse. Midnight Express provided critical routes and specialized equipment that would be essential to my national hub-and-spoke model, particularly for connecting our early morning deliveries across different states. I arranged a meeting with Mr. Henderson, the aging owner I had dealt with years ago at the online retailer, now a shadow of his former self, still gruff but clearly worn down by years of fighting a losing battle. "I'm looking to retire in the next year or two," Henderson confided over a surprisingly candid lunch. "My kids have no interest in the business. I'll likely sell to the highest bidder, but there haven't been many." The implications were serious. If a competitor acquired Midnight Express, they could block Nocturne Logistics' expansion by controlling key routes or raising prices beyond sustainability. "Would you consider selling to us?" I asked. Henderson shook his head. "The big players weren't interested, said we were too niche, too far gone. And your company is too small to acquire us fully, son." That night, I called Sophia and shared my concerns. If someone else buys Midnight Express, everything we're building could be at risk. So why don't you buy it? She suggested simply. The idea seemed absurd initially. I had savings from my salary and the initial seed funding, but nowhere near enough to purchase a company like Midnight Express outright, even a struggling one. Yet the more I considered it, the more strategically vital it seemed. I approached several banks with a business plan for acquiring Midnight Express as a private investment. With my growing credentials, the proven success of Nocturne Logistics, and Midnight Express's established, though declining, infrastructure, I secured financing for 70% of the purchase price, using my personal assets as collateral for the down payment. To maintain secrecy, I established a holding company, Night Owl Holdings, named after my consistent nocturnal schedule. Over the next 3 months, I negotiated terms with Henderson while continuing to implement my transformation strategy at Nocturne Logistics. The day I signed the preliminary purchase agreement for Midnight Express was also the day Nocturne Logistics won its first major national contract under my new expansion strategy. The company's revenue had already begun to climb, and projections suggested exponential growth if we continued on course. My family, still oblivious, would occasionally ask if my logistics projects were still keeping me busy. I didn't argue. With my position at Nocturne Logistics strengthening and my secret acquisition of Midnight Express proceeding, I was playing a longer game than anyone realized. The real transformation was just beginning. 5 years passed in a blur of 18-hour workdays, cross-country flights, and relentless expansion. Under my operational leadership, Nocturne Logistics transformed from a small, regional overnight courier to an industry innovator, a critical player in the national supply chain. Our valuations soared from a humble few million to over $250 million, making us one of the fastest-growing logistics providers in our sector. I had quietly retained Mr. Henderson as a consultant during the transition of Midnight Express, and he helped me understand the nuances of large-scale freight and interstate operations. I expanded Midnight Express's client base beyond Nocturne Logistics while ensuring our company received preferential treatment, creating a strategic advantage no competitor could match. Our growth strategy proceeded along multiple fronts. We established our first major regional hubs in key cities across the country, giving us access to lucrative new markets for same-night and next-morning deliveries. Our R&D department, revitalized with new talent and resources, developed proprietary routing algorithms and inventory management systems that revolutionized our core products' efficiency and reliability. We acquired 3 struggling regional carriers, integrating their client bases and salvaging their best assets while discarding outdated systems. I implemented cutting-edge automated sorting and warehousing processes that reduced waste by 40% and increased production capacity by 65%. Meanwhile, Nocturne Logistics flourished under my quiet ownership, a secret empire built in the shadows of the conventional business world. My personal life, predictably, took a back seat to the relentless demands of building this company. Sophia and I had married in a small, rushed ceremony that my family barely attended, thinking it was just a casual affair, me being busy with work. A year later, our daughter, Nova, was born. My time at home became precious and rare, a fact that caused increasing friction in my marriage. "You're building an empire for a family you never see," Sophia observed one night after I missed Nova's bedtime story for the 3rd consecutive evening. She was right. But I was caught in the momentum of creation. Nocturne Logistics had become the company I had envisioned in college, and I couldn't step back now. Not when we were achieving everything I had dreamed of. At work, subtle shifts in the power dynamic began to emerge. Industry publications featured me in articles about innovative leadership, even if they couldn't quite pin down the elusive night shift CEO. Employees loyal to older, less efficient methods retired or transferred to less critical roles, replaced by a new generation of driven individuals who thrived in our unique, nocturnal environment. My parents, still believing I was consulting, would occasionally mention how well I seemed to be doing, often in the context of how stress-free Chloe's life looked in comparison. They had no idea I was running a multi-million-dollar operation. Then came the unexpected decision by Chloe. After years of globetrotting and occasional small-scale brand partnerships, her social media career had plateaued. She'd burnt through her savings on a particularly ambitious, ill-fated travel documentary, and for the first time, she needed to work. A real job, as she put it. Through a contact she'd made at a creative agency, she heard about an internship, opening at a fast-growing logistics company with a unique corporate culture that offered flexible hours. Nocturne logistics, she thought, sounded cutting-edge and cool. It was just an internship, a temporary thing to gain some experience and rebuild her finances, but she was surprisingly enthusiastic about it. She never bothered to look at the full company name or the details beyond the vague, appealing description. When she announced to the family that she'd landed an internship at some tech logistics startup, I nearly choked on my coffee. My parents were thrilled, convinced she was finally settling down and finding a more stable path. I simply nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral, a knot forming in my stomach. The secret I had guarded so carefully for 5 years was about to be put to the ultimate test. The day Chloe walked into Nocturne Logistics as an intern was the day my carefully constructed two lives collided. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, our day shift winding down as the night crew prepared to take over. I was in my glass-walled office overlooking the main sorting facility, reviewing the quarter's financials, which showed we were just shy of hitting a $500 million valuation. My head of HR, Sarah, a diligent woman who had joined us early on, knocked on my door. "Leo, your sister, Chloe Santiago, is here for her internship orientation," she announced, a slight amusement in her voice. "She's in the reception area. Apparently, she just showed up." Sarah knew my family, but knew nothing of the depth of my involvement in Nocturne Logistics beyond being its main investor and strategic advisor, a polite fiction I maintained even with my closest colleagues. I nodded, my mind racing. This was it. The moment I had simultaneously dreaded and, in some perverse way, anticipated. I walked out to the reception area, steeling myself. There she was, Chloe, dressed in an impeccably styled but slightly bewildered expression, clutching a designer handbag, looking utterly out of place in our functional industrial space. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Leo?" she exclaimed, her voice carrying through the quiet reception area, echoing the sentiment from that first night I worked years ago. "What are you doing here? Are you visiting someone?" The interns around, most of them fresh-faced recent graduates eager to impress, exchanged curious glances. The surprise on her face was genuine, unfeigned. It was clear she hadn't connected my vague logistics projects to this massive modern company. The immediate threat wasn't discovery by my family, but by my own employees, who suddenly saw a familiar face, a Santiago, appearing unexpectedly in the presence of their elusive CEO. I quickly composed myself, putting on the calm, authoritative demeanor I used for high-stakes business negotiations. "Chloe," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the internal turmoil. "Welcome to Nocturne Logistics. I'm Leo, the CEO." Her jaw literally dropped. The interns stared. Chloe's usual composure vanished, replaced by open-mouthed shock. The CEO?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "But you said you were a consultant." I offered a small, knowing smile. My consulting grew into something more substantial. I motioned for Sarah to proceed with her orientation, my gaze holding Chloe's. The look in her eyes shifted from surprise to a complex mixture of confusion, disbelief, and perhaps a flicker of something akin to betrayal. This wasn't just about me having a job. It was about the scale of the secret I had kept, the entire world I had built while she was living her carefree, visible life. Chloe's first few weeks as an intern were a masterclass in awkwardness, both for her and for me. She was assigned to the logistics optimization department, ironically the very nerve center of my innovations, putting her in direct contact with Elena and Sophia. Elena, ever perceptive, observed Chloe with a knowing look that implied she understood far more than she let on. Sophia, on the other hand, was outwardly amused. "Your sister has no idea what a pivot is, does she?" she whispered to me during a late-night strategy session. "She thinks optimization means finding the best lighting for an Instagram photo." Chloe, true to her nature, adapted quickly to the social dynamics, if not the technical ones. She charmed her fellow interns and quickly made friends, navigating the office politics with an ease I never possessed. But the actual work of logistics, the meticulous data entry, the analytical reports, the understanding of complex supply chains, that proved to be a struggle. I'd see her sometimes, late at night, still hunched over her desk, a frustrated frown on her face, trying to make sense of a spreadsheet. It was a stark contrast to the effortless grace she displayed in her online persona. I purposefully kept my distance, treating her like any other intern, perhaps even slightly more formally. I knew that any perceived favoritism would create resentment among the staff, and any attempt at reconciliation would have to come on her terms, not mine. The secret was out, at least in the company, but the larger family revelation loomed. Then came a day when a critical shipment, a rush order for a major new client, faced a potential delay due to an unforeseen routing error. It was late in the night, the heart of our operations. The senior manager overseeing the issue was on a crucial call, and the junior staff were scrambling. I watched from my office as Chloe surprisingly stepped up. She didn't know the technical solution, but she possessed an innate ability to connect people and gather information. She quickly identified a veteran night shift dispatcher who had experienced a similar problem years ago and facilitated a rapid communication bridge between him and the frantic team. It wasn't a technical fix, but a human one, a testament to her unique, people-centric strengths. The shipment was rerouted and dispatched with only a minor delay. Later that night, Elena told me about Chloe's unexpected intervention. "She has a knack for people, Leo," Elena commented, a rare smile gracing her lips. "Maybe she belongs here after all, just not in the way you expected." The next morning, I sent Chloe a brief, impersonal email. "Good work last night, intern Santiago. Keep it up." It was a small acknowledgement, but I saw a flicker of surprise and a subtle lift in her spirits when she read it. The first tiny bridge in a chasm of unspoken history had been built, not through words, but through the shared rhythm of the night. Chloe's quiet contribution during the routing crisis was a turning point, not just for her perception within the company, but for my own understanding of her potential. While she still struggled with the analytical depth of logistics, her ability to connect, to intuitively grasp human dynamics, was something I, in my data-driven world, often overlooked. She began to find her footing, slowly shifting from a bewildered newcomer to a genuinely engaged team member, albeit one with a very different skill set. She started to excel at client communication, deftly handling inquiries and even resolving minor disputes with a charm that disarmed even the most frustrated customers. Her social media savvy, once dismissed as a frivolous hobby, proved surprisingly useful in crafting internal communications and even creating engaging onboarding materials for new hires. She began to see the patterns, to understand the flow, not of packages, but of people and information. Meanwhile, Nocturne Logistics continued its meteoric rise. We approached the $500 million valuation mark that had once seemed impossible. Our success was undeniable, largely due to our proprietary technology and, more importantly, our integrated national network, secretly bolstered by the acquisition of Midnight Express. The press called us a disruptor, an industry darling, while traditional logistics companies scratched their heads, unable to replicate our efficiency or our unique nocturnal advantage. I observed Chloe with a new lens. She was no longer just the carefree sister. She was a Santiago, yes, but also a growing part of the enterprise I had painstakingly built. She asked more pointed questions, no longer about what we did, but why we did it a certain way, and how it impacted the client experience. She still had no idea of the true scale of my ownership, believing me to be merely the CEO of Nocturne Logistics, rather than its sole founder and the mastermind behind Night Owl Holdings. The family was still, in the dark, happily basking in Chloe's serious job news and my continued vague success. They had no idea that the silent, diligent son was now running a logistics empire that dwarfed the quiet art gallery. Then came the day a major industry conference was announced, a showcase for the latest innovations in supply chain management. Nocturne Logistics was invited as a keynote speaker, a huge validation of our pioneering work. The board, composed of my early investors and key executives like Elena and Sophia, insisted I deliver the keynote address. It was an opportunity to formally unveil our full vision, to share our journey from a small garage operation to a national powerhouse. I spent weeks preparing the presentation, meticulously detailing our growth, our technological breakthroughs, and our unique human capital, the dedicated night crews. I even included a slide with a subtle nod to the early challenges, a blurry photo of that first cramped garage. The night before the conference, my mother called, full of excited chatter, about Chloe. "She's doing so well at her new job, Leo. She told me she's helping with the big conference for your company. Isn't that wonderful?" I managed a non-committal hum, my heart pounding. Chloe was indeed helping with the conference, specifically, managing the attendee experience and coordinating the VIP lounge. It was a role that played to her strengths, but it also meant she would be front and center, witnessing the full scope of my public persona, of the company she was now interning for. The conference hall was packed. Industry titans, curious competitors, and eager students filled every seat. My parents, surprisingly, were there too, having been invited by Chloe. They sat in the front row, beaming, no doubt thinking this was just another of my successful consulting gigs. Chloe herself was buzzing around the VIP lounge, dressed professionally, a small headset in her ear, coordinating effortlessly. When I took the stage, the spotlight blinding, I felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. I began my address, speaking passionately about the silent revolution happening in the night, about the dedication of our teams, about the strategic acquisitions that allowed us to build an unparalleled network. I highlighted the journey, the struggles, the sacrifices. As I projected the slide with the blurred image of the garage, I saw Chloe, frozen in the back of the VIP lounge, her face pale. She had seen that garage before, in my old photo albums, a place I had dismissed as merely a storage unit when she'd asked about it years ago. A wave of realization seemed to wash over her. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I continued my speech, my voice ringing with confidence, detailing our $500 million valuation, our proprietary technology, and our future plans to expand into international markets. I spoke of Nocturne Logistics not as a client of Midnight Express, but as an integrated entity, a seamlessly connected network built on the foundation of strategic vertical integration. As I concluded to thunderous applause, I glanced at Chloe. Her eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of shock, awe, and a profound, unsettling understanding. The secret was finally out. The silent builder of the night had stepped into the light, and his sister, the carefree dancer in the sun, was standing right there to witness it all. The applause for my keynote address was deafening, but all I could see was Chloe. Her face, a canvas of disbelief, was a mirror of the secret I'd kept hidden for so long. She didn't approach me after the speech, but her stunned gaze followed me as I worked the room, accepting congratulations. I saw her speaking animatedly with Elena and Sophia, no doubt trying to piece together the fragments of information that had just crashed into her carefully constructed reality. Elena, with her usual understated wisdom, would likely be a steadying presence. Sophia, I imagined, would enjoy the spectacle of Chloe's world turning upside down. The conference continued its celebratory hum, but for Chloe and me, a silent, profound confrontation had already begun. The next morning, back at the Nocturne Logistics headquarters, the air was thick with unspoken questions. Chloe walked into my office, her shoulders squared, a surprising resolve in her posture. She looked less like a bewildered intern and more like the formidable social media personality I knew, stripped of her usual charming filters. "The CEO?" she began, her voice low, but vibrating with suppressed emotion. "You're the CEO of this entire company? A company that's apparently worth $500 million? And you've been doing this for years?" I leaned back in my chair, meeting her gaze steadily. "Yes, Chloe. I founded Nocturne Logistics right after college. It started small, very small, but it grew." "But why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her voice cracking slightly. "Mom and Dad, they just think you're consulting. And me? I thought you were just, I don't know, a glorified delivery driver. You let me believe that." "It wasn't about deceiving you," I explained, choosing my words carefully. "It was about building something on my own terms, without expectations or the pressure of family legacy. Our parents, they wouldn't have understood the ambition, the risk. They would have wanted me to stay safe, near the gallery." "Safe?" she scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her. "While you were building an empire in secret? Do you know how many times I worried about you, stuck working those weird night shifts? How many times I told Mom and Dad you should just get a normal job like the gallery? I thought you were struggling." Her voice rose with each word, a mixture of hurt and incredulity. "I wasn't struggling, Chloe. I was building. Every late night, every early morning, it was a brick in this foundation." I paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "And you, with your travels, your posts, you were living the life you wanted. I didn't want to overshadow that, or pull you into a world you didn't choose." She walked to the large window overlooking the bustling loading docks, the constant movement of packages and forklifts. "So, all those times I talked about my brand partnerships and my creative projects, you were, what? Nodding along, thinking about how many containers were moving through your warehouse?" "Something like that," I admitted. "I was proud of what you were doing, Chloe. I still am. But my path was different, and it required a different kind of focus, a different kind of privacy." She turned, her eyes still shimmering, but a new light was beginning to dawn in them, a reluctant respect. "So, when I applied for this internship, you knew it was your company?" "I did," I confirmed. "It was quite a surprise to see your resume." A small wry smile touched my lips. "I figured it was time for you to see what logistics really looked like." The tension in the room, thick moments before, began to dissipate, replaced by a fragile understanding. I just can't believe it," she whispered, shaking her head. "All this time, all this success, and you never said a word." "Sometimes the biggest transformations happen in silence, Chloe," I said, rising from my chair and walking towards her. "And sometimes the people who know you best are the last to see them." The conversation was far from over, but the first, most difficult step had been taken. The secret was no longer just mine. It was now hers to process, to understand, and perhaps to finally respect. The revelation hit our parents like a freight train. Chloe, still reeling from the conference, decided it was time to tell them the full truth, rather than let me continue my vague, consulting charade. She arranged a family dinner, and for the first time in years, the Santiago family sat around the table with an elephant the size of a logistics hub in the room. My mother, Maria, was the first to speak after Chloe laid out the facts, recounting my keynote address and the sheer scale of Nocturne logistics. $500 million? She repeated, her voice a mix of awe and bewilderment. Leo, my son, you built all this while we were worrying about your odd hours? Her expression was one of profound shock, laced with an undeniable surge of pride. My father, Ricardo, was surprisingly quiet initially, his usual charm replaced by a rare solemnity. He listened intently, occasionally rubbing his chin, his gaze shifting between Chloe and me. When Chloe finished, he finally spoke, his voice unusually soft. All those times, Leo, when I talked about the gallery, and you were just building this vast enterprise, why did you keep it from us? I thought you wouldn't approve, Dad, I confessed. That you'd see it as a distraction from art, from the true value you always spoke of. I didn't want your disappointment. He chuckled. A dry, slightly rueful sound. Disappointment? Leo, you built something from nothing, a modern empire. That's a different kind of art, a different kind of value. I just never saw it. I was too caught up in my own world. He looked at me then, a flicker of something new in his eyes, not just pride, but respect, and perhaps a touch of regret. I am sorry, son, for not seeing you, for not understanding the path you were forging. Chloe, who had been listening intently, reached across the table and squeezed my hand. And I'm sorry for not seeing it either, Leo. For dismissing your work. For thinking I was living this grand, adventurous life while you were just toiling away. She paused, a genuine smile spreading across her face. Turns out, you're the true adventurer, building something incredible in the shadows. The following weeks were a whirlwind of adjustments. My parents, now immensely proud, suddenly wanted to understand every detail of Nocturne logistics. My father, who once dismissed spreadsheets, now asked surprisingly astute questions about market share and expansion plans. My mother, with her gentle spirit, tried to introduce a bit of artistic flair to our stark, functional office space, much to the amusement of Elena and Sophia. Chloe, to my surprise, fully embraced her role at Nocturne Logistics. She moved beyond simple client communications and began to specialize in employee engagement and corporate culture, leveraging her natural charisma and social media skills. She created internal content that showcased our diverse teams, organized morale-boosting events for our night crews, and even launched a series of day in the life of a night shift worker videos that went viral internally and attracted new talent. She found her own unique way to contribute, not in the cold numbers or logistics algorithms, but in the human element that bound our company together. She discovered that connection, her innate strength, was just as vital to our operations as efficiency. The journey towards reconciliation within the family wasn't immediate, but it was earnest. There were still moments of awkwardness, of old habits lingering, but a new foundation of open communication and mutual respect was being laid. Chloe and I started having genuine conversations, not just about work, but about our lives, our dreams, and the choices we had made. She'd listen with genuine interest as I talked about supply chain challenges, and I, in turn, found myself fascinated by her insights into communication and human connection. It was a slow, steady dismantling of the walls I had built around myself, and she, unknowingly, had helped me build them down, brick by brick. The secret was out, and with it, a newfound honesty and depth entered our family dynamics. The 6 months following the great family revelation were transformative for Nocturne Logistics and our family. The company, now fully transparent about its ownership and operational model, attracted even more attention and investment. Our stock price, already strong, surged further as the market recognized the genius of our vertically integrated nocturnal operation. Major clients, sensing stability and innovation, solidified their relationships, and new ones clamored to partner with us. My father, Ricardo, though still officially retired from the gallery, became our informal brand ambassador, charming new clients with tales of his brilliant son and his visionary company. He even took to visiting the warehouse, marveling at the automated sorting systems, a far cry from the quiet art gallery he'd once managed. My mother, Maria, while never fully grasping the intricacies of logistics, provided invaluable emotional support, ensuring I took much-needed breaks and spent time with Sophia and Nova. She even suggested a small art installation for our main lobby, a subtle nod to our family's artistic roots, which surprisingly was a huge hit with employees and visitors alike. Chloe, for her part, blossomed in her new role. She proved to be an indispensable asset, not just in improving internal communication and company morale, but also in bridging the gap between our high-tech operations and the human element. She developed a series of captivating internal documentaries, showcasing the dedicated individuals who made our 24/7 operations possible. She leveraged her social media instincts to create a unique employer brand, attracting top talent who were drawn to our innovative culture and the opportunity to be part of something truly groundbreaking. Her day-in-the-life videos became so popular that news outlets started featuring them, inadvertently boosting our public image. The turning point for Chloe and me, however, came unexpectedly. One evening, after a particularly late strategy session, she found me still in my office, staring out at the city lights. "You know, Leo," she began, leaning against the doorframe, "all those years I thought you were just playing it safe, working these weird jobs because you weren't creative enough for the gallery. I thought I was the one taking risks, chasing dreams." I turned, a tired smile on my face. "And I thought you were living this perfectly curated life, effortlessly happy, while I was buried under deadlines and numbers. I built this in silence, partly because I thought it was the only way I could carve my own path, away from what everyone expected." She walked closer, her gaze softening. "It's funny, isn't it? How we tell ourselves stories about each other. But watching you build this, seeing the sheer scale of it, and knowing how much you sacrificed, it's humbling and inspiring." She paused then. "And the irony? My passion for connecting people, for telling stories. It turns out, it's exactly what this company needs too." "We need both, Chloe," I replied, a profound sense of peace settling over me. The logic and the heart, the numbers and the narrative. That's what makes Nocturne Logistics truly special. Over the next year, Nocturne Logistics flourished under our combined, recalibrated leadership. Our valuation climbed steadily, surpassing $750 million by the following fiscal year, and we began exploring global expansion opportunities. My father, with my mother by his side, officially retired from the gallery, leaving it in the capable hands of a trusted curator. They often visited the Nocturne Logistics headquarters, no longer with bewildered pride, but with a deep, knowing understanding of what their son had built. The company's anniversary celebration became an opportunity for public acknowledgement. My father took the stage, his voice strong and clear, embodying his role as the family patriarch. "Years ago, I thought I knew what success looked like," he began, his gaze sweeping over the crowd of employees, investors, and family members. "I thought it was about art, about quiet beauty. But the greatest masterpiece my family ever created wasn't painted on a canvas. It was built, brick by brick, in the silent hours of the night, by my son, Leo." The room fell silent as Dad continued, his voice thick with emotion. I failed to see the brilliance of his vision, the immense strength of his leadership, and the depth of his commitment to innovation. That failure nearly cost us everything. But through his perseverance, and with the unexpected spark brought by my daughter, Chloe, we have become something greater than I could have ever imagined. He turned to me, tears in his eyes. Leo, you earned this. All of it. As I joined him, on stage, the applause was deafening. He embraced me publicly for the first time in memory, whispering, "Welcome to the light, son." Looking back on our journey from a small regional garage operation to an industry leader, from a family divided by unspoken ambitions to a family united by shared purpose, I realized that sometimes the most profound achievements are those built in silence, only to be fully appreciated when they finally step into the light. And sometimes, the very people you sought to protect from your struggles are the ones who help you realize your greatest victories. What's your experience with hidden talents or unexpected family dynamics? Have you ever had a secret ambition that only recently came to light? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might be navigating complex family relationships or building their own quiet empires. Thank you for joining me on this journey of growth and reconciliation. And remember that sometimes, the most challenging truths lead to the most meaningful transformations.